What's going on, guys? Gamer Dude back once again with some more informative gaming news. Well, actually, this is a bit more of a breakdown, but it's also a bit of news as well. But anyway, before we begin, y'all know the routine, or at least I hope you do by now. If you are new to the channel, please make sure you smash that like button and drop me a subscribe, because it would just be your good deed of the day. Same applies if you are a returning viewer. Now then, straight to business. Burnout. Where has it been? What happened to it? Why did they stop after Burnout Paradise? So in this video, we're going to be breaking down why the time is right for a new Burnout game and why Criterion actually wants to do it but can't. So let's kick things off. Criterion Games' Burnout series has been dominant for many years. If anything, it really brought arcade racing to a new level back when it first released on the PS2. But the current gaming landscape right now is actually kind of perfect for this game's return, whether it be a remaster, a remake, or a new game entirely. In most racing video games today, players are encouraged to avoid obstacles and weave through traffic. You know, you actually get penalized for it in most games. Burnout, however, is a franchise that completely alters this formula by encouraging mayhem and destruction, as you can see on screen. Now, for this particular Burnout game, this was renamed to Showtime, but in the original Burnout games, it was called a takedown event, where you just crashed into an intersection and caused as much damage as humanly possible. Whereas with this, you can just keep the chain going. It's a little bit more fun, but I still prefer the traditional formula of it, you know, the whole crash into an intersection and go from there. Now, the franchise has been dormant for the last few years. But with racing games receiving newfound popularity, now might be the perfect time for Burnout to make its triumphant return. I mean, yeah, of course, we got Burnout Paradise Remastered. That's the footage you're currently seeing on screen now. But let's be honest, Burnout Paradise, when it first released on the PS3, it wasn't received very well. You know, people were saying, well, it's basically just Need for Speed with crashing. You know, it's just Need for Speed and you just encourage to crash, basically. But yeah. Anyway, racing games are, of course, once again in the spotlight thanks to racing games such as Gran Turismo and Forza Horizon. And developers have expressed interest in revisiting and or reviving Burnout with current gen technology. A new Burnout game could surprise people with spectacular crashes, vehicular destruction, that is just even more detailed and impactful than ever before. I mean, can you imagine a Burnout game with the level of graphics that Gran Turismo has? I mean, that would be totally insane. It would kind of mess with Burnout's whole cartoonistic formula, because as you can see on screen, it does look very cartoony. But that's what the original Burnout games did as well. They looked very cartoon-like. But I can actually just imagine a Burnout game with the level of graphics that Gran Turismo has, or Need for Speed has, or even Forza Horizon. I would love to see that. Now, of course, the franchise has gone entirely dormant ever since the remaster. The first Burnout game released way back in 2001, so it's more than 20 years ago now, originally developed by Criterion Games. It introduced many of the elements that would become a staple of the series. To increase their speed, players need to unlock boost, which is done through risky behavior, like driving on the wrong side of the road, weaving in and out of traffic, you know, near misses, trading paint with other cars, drifting, etc., etc. Now, if players do crash in any of the games, a cinematic camera displays the carnage from multiple angles. And I really enjoyed that about Burnout because, you know, it gave you that sense of, God damn it, you know, it really threw it in your face that you crashed, and you were just like, oh, do you really have to like tell me I crashed? I know I crashed. Like, just let me play. But that's what really made it quite enjoyable, to be honest. You know, I enjoyed that anyway, and I quite enjoyed that they kept it in Burnout Paradise as well. Now, the first Burnout game didn't feature any licensed vehicles at all. They were all just created by Criterion Games. And let's be honest, you know, it was the first game in the series, and it was way back in 2001. So you can't really expect anything big from something like that. But its popularity increased so much that in Burnout Paradise we were able to get the likes of what you see on screen right now, which is a spoof on Ecto 1. And it's absolutely beautiful. You know, at the beginning of the video, I don't know if you caught the reference, but it was also the Back to the Future DeLorean. You know, we have McLaren F1s, there's Mustang Mark 1s, there's, oh God, there's all sorts. You know, if I was listing all the cars, we'd be here all day, so I'm just going to move on. But yeah, my point being, the other Burnout games, they didn't feature the licensed vehicles either. They just took on their likeness. You know, so it wasn't called a Mustang Mark 1. It was called a Mustav or something like that. But this isn't too much of a surprise, as car manufacturers likely wouldn't appreciate seeing their vehicles used to cause highway collisions for fun. And it's the same in games like Grand Theft Auto, for example. They all have weird spoofy names because, you know, things happen. But all in all, the Burnout series was a success, raking in over 15 million copies worldwide. You know, while this may have pointed to the possibility of the series having a longevity in the future, not much has been seen of it following Burnout Paradise. The open-world racing game Burnout Paradise released in 2008, with the remastered version dropping 10 years later in 2018. So many players were expecting a completely new game, but instead Burnout Paradise Remastered, it just came with all the DLCs and all the spoofs that you would have gotten from the original game on the PS3. Now, although Paradise enjoyed respectable sales that provide heaps of fast-paced, danger-driven fun, it never led to a new title. This should not mark the end of a series, as there is still plenty this game series can offer. Despite its lengthy hiatus, fans really haven't forgotten about Burnout. I haven't. I mean, just by coming back to do this video, I really enjoyed playing through this again. Head developer at Criterion Games, Kieran Crimmins, recently revealed that the two most prized franchises for the studio are Need for Speed and Burnout. While there are currently no plans for a new Burnout game, the series has a unique take on racing that, and I quote, would be absolutely phenomenal now. Crimmins is right at the front, as no franchise has been able to replicate the high-speed, high-risk racing that the Burnout franchise thrives upon. Although racing games lost popularity for a little bit, the time does seem perfect for Burnout to make a return. You know, maybe I will say ditch the whole open world element and go back to, you know, just tracks or circuits, or, you know, the sort of thing that the original Burnout games had. You know, you're just racing on a highway in a set direction, you know, because the whole open world element did make it feel a little bit like too much like Need for Speed, just with crashes. Now, franchises like Forza, Gran Turismo, and Need for Speed have put racing way back on the map, while titles like Wreckfest have helped people rediscover the joys of vehicular carnage. I mean, me personally, my love of vehicular carnage started with the Destruction Derby games. You cannot go wrong with Destruction Derby, and it is a damn shame that that franchise ended as well. I loved Destruction Derby. But then after Destruction Derby, it was Burnout, and then of course nothing for quite a while, and then Wreckfest, and that's all I had to tide me over, really. Because when you have a bad day, it's nice to just cause some carnage like you see on screen right now. Now, using the experience Criterion has learned from developing titles like Need for Speed Most Wanted and Need for Speed Unbound, the studio could craft a beautifully phenomenal title. But sadly, there are currently no plans for a new Burnout game, so fans will have to settle for Burnout Paradise's remaster for the time being. They can also indulge in other vehicular destruction games, as I mentioned, Destruction Derby or Wreckfest. However, with Criterion showing interest once again in the series, it may be a sign that the franchise is about to come out of a long hiatus. If so, I think it should find a very loyal fan base waiting. Now, moving on to the second half of this video, we're going to talk a little bit about Criterion themselves and why they would actually love to make a new Burnout game. Now, the story goes that Criterion would love to make a new Burnout game again one day in the future after the series has been dry for so long. It has been years since we've seen a new Burnout game. As stated before, the last release was Burnout Paradise Remastered in 2018, 10 years after its sort of original game, let's say. Now, the classic Burnout series was absolutely awesome. And there was actually a mini game released. It was called Burnout Crash, but it was only a small scale thing for mobiles, and it was shit. It was trash. it was awful. But that's the closest thing we've had to classic Burnout. The series expanded into larger maps with Burnout 3, which was my favorite of the franchise, Burnout 3 Takedown. I loved that. And that came out in 2004, following EA's takeover of Criterion Games. Now, that should wave red flags, the fact that EA owns Criterion Games, but it wasn't actually that big of a deal. EA Games and Criterion came together and made brilliant games after Burnout 3. It was flawless. Now, arguably, we haven't really seen classic Burnout since the original two games from 2001 and 2002. Sure, the original two games were very linear, but for some, this linear, nonsensical arcade gameplay was the perfect formula. However, there's little arguing that Burnout Paradise wasn't a blast. I mean, once again, just by recording this footage for this video, I enjoyed it. I had fun. It was fun just randomly causing destruction and mayhem for no apparent reason. It was fun. I'd forgotten how much fun it was. Now, in recent years, Criterion Games has been focused on the Need for Speed series, which is understandable, EA and all. With that in mind, if there's one thing that Burnout fans can agree on, is that we would love to see the series return, and evidently, so does the Need for Speed Unbound creative director, Kieran Crimmins, whom I mentioned earlier. But yeah, also it does seem like Criterion wants Burnout to return. They keep pushing for it. During an interview with Eurogamer, Crimmins said he'd love to see the Burnout series return someday. It's not something they are looking at doing right now, but if they're talking about the two games that the studio has the most passion for, he mentioned it was Need for Speed and Burnout. Crimmins went on to say that Burnout offered a unique take on racing, and he's not wrong. It did. It was the first of its kind, really. He said also it would be absolutely phenomenal on modern systems. Again, completely agree. And he also stated that he would love to do it if given the opportunity. Now, once again, at this time, there is no official indication that Burnout will ever return. You know, there's no hints, there's no rumors, there's nothing swirling about on the mythical lands of Reddit about it or alt like that. But at least we know that it's in the thoughts of the lead developer at Criterion Games. So I doubt anyone from EA Games will ever watch this, but if you are watching this, make it happen. We want Burnout. Or at least something resembling Burnout, you know? Need for Speed's great and all, but there's too many of them now. Just do something different, you know? That's all I'm saying. I'm not hating on Need for Speed. I'm just saying, you know, there's so many Need for Speed games out now. Just give us something different, you know? Give us something that where we can just drive around for the sake of driving around and kick the crap out of other racers, NPC racers, I might add. You know, it's fun because Burnout Paradise said they made it online as well, so you could join your friends and take out your friends if you wanted to. Ha ha ha! I remember doing that on the PS3 quite a lot. But yeah, until that day arrives, everybody can of course enjoy the Need for Speed game Unbound, which released in December last year. But let me know in the comments below, would you like to see the Burnout series make a triumphant return? Do you think it should stay dead after Burnout Paradise? Did you enjoy Burnout Paradise? Did you think it was worthy of the Burnout name? Or do you think, as I said, it was a little bit too much like Need for Speed, just with crashing? See, personally, even if they don't bring back the game as a whole, I'd love to see the original trilogy remastered at least. You know, remasters and remakes are a big thing in today's world, and I really think that it would sell well. You know, like they did with the Rocksteady Games did with the Batman Arkham trilogy. Do something like that. You know, you get the Burnout trilogy. Why not? I mean, if they're not allowed to make a new game, or if they can't make a new Burnout game, no saying they can't remaster the originals. The coding is there. All you've got to do is upscale the graphics. But yeah, that's about going to cover it for this video. So I want to thank you all once again for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Of course, you all know the routine. If you are new to the channel, please make sure you smash that like button and drop me a subscribe, because it would just be your good deed of the day. Same applies if you are a returning viewer. So, of course, you guys know I'm going to apologize once more for the lack of content in recent months. Start of the year, I had agonizing back pain and foot pain, so I couldn't even sit down, let alone play a game. Then, when I got over that, I got COVID, so I was out again for a while. And then when I got over that, I was forcibly evicted from my apartment, so I had to go through a grueling process of finding a new place to live. And when I did finally move, my internet was for shit. It didn't work. So I was completely out of the game for quite a while. But yeah, I'm back now. I'm not going anywhere. There's plenty of content coming from me in the future. There's some Gran Turismo 7 stuff coming out. There's new update for Saints Row. There's the Horizon Forbidden West DLC. The Star Trek Resurgence is out now. The Expanse, I'm thinking about getting that as well. The new Star Wars game, definitely thinking about getting that once my finances are sorted out. So yeah, there's a lot to come from me. There's a lot to come. Oh, and not to mention Spider-Man 2 this year. Almost forgot about that. So stay tuned for that as well. So yeah, that being said then, this has been Gamer Dude. Happy gaming, and I will catch you all in the next one, guys.